Welcome. It's good to have you here for our live webinar today. And we're going to talk today about our topic of families, working with families, and particularly communication and families. So I hope that's what you came for. First, though, if you would like, if you're willing, I would love to hear where you're from. So you're welcome to chat in the chat box and let me know where you're from. I'm always curious how people find us and where they're coming from. And you can just say your country, if you're comfortable with that, or your state, or your province, or Scotland, Croatia. Fantastic. And you can add that in later if you would like. Um, let's jump into it today. This topic is near and dear to all of our hearts because all of us have families. Even if you, let's say you grew up in an orphanage, you might have a family of choice. Everyone has a basic community that we come out of, and it really is a little community. And that community is incredibly important to us because it's where we came from. We all came from somewhere. And then there's the relationships within that little community. And it could be that you have children, that you are working with the relationships between yourself and your children. You could have aging parents. You could have sibling relationships that have all sorts of complexity to them. You know, you have cousins, you have grandparents, whatever it is. And we all know that sickening feeling that you get when you're walking into a conversation that you know is going to be painful. It's that one person who really gets to you. And or you know, you are stepping into a conversation that where you always get caught in a whirlpool that sucks you down and you don't know how to get out of. Or you're trying to help someone in your family, trying to be helpful, and you cannot figure out how to do it. You know, somebody is stuck and you don't know how to actually be helpful to them. Or there's conversations where maybe they feel okay at the time, but you come out of it really feeling a sense of doubt in yourself that wasn't there before. You know, or there's the ones where nobody's listening. There's all these different situations. I don't have to go on and on because you know what I'm talking about. And, you know, maybe some of you have wonderful relationships with your family and nothing ever goes wrong and you always feel fantastic, which is great. And I'm very glad for you. Um, so maybe this webinar won't offer you very much if that's the case. But for the rest of us, we know that it can be complex and that at times family is one of the primary places that we get confused and even at times lost, and that sometimes really we really feel a lot of pain around this. So that's part of why it's so important today to take on this topic. And I want to say that sometimes we can really feel hopeless in the sense of there's nothing that can be done. It's just everything is stuck and it can never change. And I want to say that what I'm going to present today will be useful no matter what is going on in the situation. I'm not going to promise you a magic wand to wave away all of your family patterns. That's not possible. But I'm going to offer you a way that's easy and smart and effective to be able to work with those patterns in a little more skillful way and maybe a hugely more skillful way. So the good news about what I'm presenting today is that we're not going to ask you to give up your truth, your integrity, or your warmth. And there's a lot of systems that communication approaches that ask you to kind of manipulate people. That's not our approach. We're not trying to manipulate happiness, with a fake smile. But neither are we just going to push people away. Oh, you just need to not care about that person. Then that'll solve all your problems. Actually, there's a way to keep that care and also keep that integrity. And that's quite powerful. Um, this is everything I'm going to present today is this approach we call green light communication. And it's detailed in this book, The 5 Keys to Mindful Communication by my mentor and friend, Susan Gillis Chapman. And, buy the book. It's quite excellent. And we have taught this for many years now. I think it's been 12 years now. And we taught it across North America and Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and many different states, many different cultural settings. I'll never forget, we had an online broadcast where a woman tuned in from a little island in Polynesia in the Pacific. And it was so obscure, I don't even remember the name of the island. It was something I've never heard of before or since. So people around the world have found this actually helpful. And I think to me, it's actually quite encouraging that whether I'm teaching this in Birmingham, Alabama, in the United States, in the South, very conservative, or I'm teaching it in Ukraine, or I'm teaching it in Canada, people in Holland, or whatever it is, this is a fundamentally human system. And different cultures, different approaches, people say, yeah, we might do it a little differently, but I know what you're saying. And personally, it's really revolutionized my life and my relationships with my family in more ways than I can express. And I'll tell you a little story later on about that. Um, I want to say that I have a lot to say. We're going to really jump into this material. I want you to come away with something today that's useful to you. But if you stick around to the end, I'll offer you a little extra something for staying around. So the first thing I want to say is tips and tricks for communication. You might have come hoping to get some tips and tricks to make it work. And the very first thing I want to say to you is, in a way, the most important, which is that, especially with your family, they know you very well, most of them. They know you very well. They know your patterns, they know your style, they can kind of feel your personality. If you try to pull something, try a special little technique, it tends to break the connection. Now, of course, we want to change our patterns with people, and that's really important. And actually, that's a lot of what we talk about. But there's something about tips and tricks that we go into a place in our mind where we're already a little bit disconnected from who we're talking to sometimes. I'm not saying it's always bad. Some tips are helpful, but just watch your mind in terms of tips and tricks. And that includes everything I'm telling you today. Part of what we want to highlight is how to actually connect with people, how to actually relate to people. So I'm going to share some slides with you so that it's easier to talk about this. And we need to talk about mindfulness. Now, many of you have heard the term mindfulness. Some of you might be quite familiar. But I want to reduce mindfulness down to something very simple: clear and acute attention to current experience. It just means we're paying attention. So, um, paying attention is something any of us can do. It's not, spiritual. It's not weird. It's not anything different than who we are. We can pay attention to our experience. And being able to pay attention is the essence of what is going to allow us to communicate. So let's talk about mindlessness. And again, we're going to make it super simple. Everything's going to be so simple today. We're not going to try to get fancy. We have advanced courses where we get very, very intricate about all these things. But today, simple. So mindlessness, you spill your coffee, you're looking at your cell phone walking around, and you say, well, is that really such a big deal? And it might be a little melodramatic, but the driver who's texting, we all know that mindlessness can actually be very, very consequential. And when it comes to communication, and especially our families, tuning out at the wrong moment can mean we miss something really important. If you are chit-chatting with somebody, and then later you found out that they were suicidal, and you just had no idea, or some part of you had some sense that something was going on, but you didn't tune in. Like, it's really important. It's really important. Now, we're not magicians, we're not gods. We don't know everything. But we just want to use our innate abilities to tune in, so we know when is it the right time to touch base. And this can be very mundane, just knowing what's going on with your teenage child, recognizing that your mother, who is getting older, doesn't want to go into the care facility, and just knowing how to work with those moments. So this losing clarity, depth, and focus as we shift our awareness is something we really need to work with and train ourselves around. So let's get into our core material. And I'm going quickly, I know, and we're only just barely touching the surface of any of these topics. But that's okay. That's okay. Simple is helpful. So we use a metaphor, this metaphor of the 3 traffic lights. And we're going to go through these. Traffic lights are easy for us to understand. Traffic lights are something that most of us deal with. And we understand the basis of this, the idea of a system of symbolic indicators that allow us to know, when do I go? When do I stop? When do I need to tune in a little bit more? So that's really the core of using this metaphor. And it might seem really simplistic to you. It did to me, honestly. I'll tell you, when I first heard this metaphor, I thought, oh no, this is it, a traffic light. But I want to highlight to you that actually the simplicity is its strength, because when you are confused, when you're at your limit, when you just got shocked by something that somebody said, complicated systems are honestly not very helpful. Simple is really powerful right in those moments, because our emotions are so heightened that we just need some basic indicator. And this is why this is so helpful. So let's start at the bottom. the green light. So paying attention, open. We're open and mindful. Mindful just means we're paying attention. So it's that moment when you're not distracted. Now, what does that mean for our communication? That means I'm tuned in to what's going on in the room I'm in. And that's very powerful. And it doesn't have to be anything, I don't know, dramatic. I could just be at the grocery store and I'm buying my food and I'm interacting with the person across from me, who's checking me out in the grocery store. Very simple. It just means I'm noticing what's going on. I'm looking, I'm listening, I'm sensing my senses. I'm feeling my emotions. And my emotions it's not simple. Your emotions aren't just one thing. They are kind of a fluid, changing atmosphere that help to give you indicators of what's going on. So if you suddenly feel worried or you suddenly feel bored, you suddenly feel angry, you suddenly feel excited. These are indicators just like your senses. And then your mind tuning into your thoughts. The person at the grocery store tells you about, um, what's going on with their uh, son going to college. And then you think to yourself, oh, I thought the son was younger, but they're already going to college. Has it really been that many years? All those things, those kinds of thoughts that allow you to tune in and go, wow, I've really known this person a long time. Our thoughts actually are valid indicators, um, particularly when we open up in this way, so that it's not just our thoughts, it's not just our emotions, it's not just our body, but it is a balanced system. So we don't get lost in one or the other. So then we have the yellow light. Now, the yellow light is exactly what I was just talking about a minute ago. Shock. You get shocked. Something startles you. Something comes in you're not expecting. And you get that jolt of adrenaline, and your heart starts beating, and maybe your throat gets tight. And particularly, what makes it the yellow light is not just all of those things, because those are just normal things. Sometimes it's good to be afraid. You almost got hit by a car. It's good to be afraid. Um, but part of what makes it the yellow light is we turn against ourselves. And I don't know if you've ever just put your toe against a table and there's that unexpected shock. There's that unexpected jolt of pain. And if you ever find yourself saying out loud, sometimes even just, oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm so stupid. What's wrong with me? That is actually, that's the yellow light. That's the critical moment. And we're going to talk about how to work with these as we go on here. So then there's the red light. And the red light is when we shut down. So the yellow light, we're in between. We're still sort of paying attention. We're in between mindful and mindless. There's still some information getting through. When the light goes red, it's not that everything cuts off. It's just that some of our critical information shuts down. So here is when I'm fully distracted and mindless. And this is when I go into um, more mindless patterns where I am, instead of pointing the arrow this direction, I point the arrow that direction. Instead of it shutting down and seeing myself in a certain way, I look outward and I come up with a concept about somebody else that is stuck. It's not shifting and changing with the situation, it is frozen. So we'll get more into these in a minute, but I wanted to just highlight the fact that so this allows us to navigate just like real traffic. And think of that. Think of a city with no traffic lights, a big city. And you know what? Your experience is like a big city. There is so much going on. You know, you get up and you have to deal with your morning and you have to, and maybe, you have your family and there's dynamics happening, and then you go to work and there's stuff happening at work, and then you hang out with your friends and there's things happening with your friends. It's busy. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of interactions. You're taking in media, or your phone is beeping and you get texts and things. Think of a big city with no traffic lights. It's very, very inefficient and very painful, frankly. Nobody knows what's going on. And actually, this is our experience. Our experience is often like this. We just feel confused all the time. Imagine then the traffic lights get put in and you know what to do. It's a relief. It's a real relief. So again, we're going quickly and we're just barely touching on these things. But the key thing is the green light is when we know that we can work with someone. If I'm open and they're open, there is a channel of communication that opens up between us. The question is, am I aware of that? Can I become aware that a channel of communication is actually open? And that's mindfulness. Mindfulness is knowing that is happening, and knowing that there's attunement. Now is the time to talk. The yellow light. So remember, that's when you that little voice in your head. Oh, I'm stupid, or I'm no good. This needs care, and care for this state, whether it's in myself or somebody else. It's not optional. It's not like, oh, well, it's not really that important. It's extremely important to provide that care. And the reason why, and I really want to highlight this, the reason why is because that in between state of the yellow, when I'm being harsh to myself, I am right on the edge of shutting down. Care allows me to actually regain my connection with myself. Having somebody be kind to me actually allows me to feel my own confidence again, to work with my experience. And then I could come back towards the green. But if I don't get that care, or if I get, unkindness, I tend to flee into the red light. So this issue of care is critical. It's critical every time. Now, let's say I really shut down. I really shut down into the red light. Part of what I'm doing is I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do about it. And I have created a kind of a wall between myself and everybody around me. And essentially this wall is saying, stay out. I don't want you to come in. So for somebody who's trying to work with me, they've been talking to me, but suddenly I shut down. This advice at the bottom: hold steady, back away, or communicate elsewhere. The truth is that once I put up my wall, you can't break through my wall. If I don't want to hear what you have to say, I will not hear what you have to say. We can't force somebody who's in the red light to open up, because it's basically they're afraid. Essentially, underneath it, they're afraid, and they're trying to shut you out. So sometimes you can kind of hold steady with a sense of strength and even a little bit of neutrality. You're just waiting. You're just waiting for the moment when the moment's right. Or you say, I don't have neutrality. This is really upsetting to me that this person is not listening or whatever, that they've shut down. It's too much for me. I need to back away for right now. Maybe I'll come back later. Maybe we'll talk again tomorrow. But right now I can't handle it. And so I back away, and that's valid. And then that third option, just because I can't reach this person doesn't mean I can't talk to that person over there, this person over there. So just knowing that there are other options. So let's just walk this through, that this goes back and forth. We're there with our aunt Zelda and, Uncle Tim. And Zelda she's feeling the yellow light right now. Who knows why? She just had a tough situation outside. And so she comes into the room with this yellow light. And that yellow light at some point shuts down and turns into the red. She gets angry out of context. She starts blaming without a kind of lead in or a backstory. She just stops listening. She shuts down that way. Or she is trying to be, I don't know, she's flattering somebody in a very empty way. Oh, you're so wonderful. Oh, you're so marvelous. And it doesn't actually feel really that good. It feels a bit fake. So there's different ways we can shut down. Well, Uncle Tim, he doesn't have to do this, but it's very common to go into our own yellow light when we're triggered by somebody who's in the red. So he shuts down into his yellow, and that kind of triggers this outward focus of the red. And he goes into the red. So maybe he starts blaming her. And that triggers her yellow light. And then, oh, she comes back. So you understand what I'm saying here. We don't have to go into great detail. It goes back and forth between people because nobody knows how to cut this cycle. It can go on and on. And the question is, what can we do here? What can we really do? Because we're tired of this. We're all tired of these kinds of back and forth cycles. And nobody's happy in that kind of cycle. Care, and this is not the only thing to say about this, but it's what I'm going to say today. It's the simplest part of this. Care for the yellow light cuts the chain reaction. If we can get ahead of it and intercept that yellow light and provide care right in that moment when somebody is saying, oh, I'm just such a screw up. I'm unlovable. I'm all of these things. I'm such an idiot. If we can actually say, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go for a walk. Let's go down by the river. Tell me what's going on. You're already transmitting to this person a sense that they're actually decent, they're actually okay. And no matter what else, maybe they have problems, maybe they do have problems, but they're not fundamentally broken. And that cuts this yellow light, catastrophic thinking of the yellow light that I'm bad. So let's introduce this concept. This is, if I go down to the river with this person and we have a nice conversation where I'm actually listening, I'm actually really listening. I'm not just trying to jam my solutions at this person or fix all their problems. That's not really possible. We call this a green zone. The river is a green zone. It might just be a nice place to be. The conversation is a green zone. And there could be different green zones. You go out and you listen to some beautiful music. You spend time with your dogs or whatever it is. A green zone can be many different things. You read some poetry together. And you can do a green zone by yourself. It's where we naturally reconnect with ourselves. So it helps pull people back into the green light of being connected with themselves, of being mindful. So that's it. So we can do it by ourselves. We can do it with trusted people. This is not something we do with strangers. This is something you do, I shouldn't say never with strangers, but rarely with strangers. You do it with your trusted people. And there's more. We're not going to get into all of this. We have much material in our courses. But in terms of today, I just want to say a few closing remarks. One is I want to say that this does work. And I hear this from the people I train who come through our courses. I hear this from, I hear this that they get feedback from their families that they are better at connecting, that they are better at listening. And I also want to say it from my own experience. I had an experience with a cousin recently, and I always change the details of stories because for people's privacy. But her name is Sarah, and she and I have had a difficult relationship at times. And we had a particularly confusing situation a couple of years ago where we just stopped talking to each other very much, even though we'd been very close. And every time we got together, it was awkward. Every time it was really painful. And from my perspective, because the light was red, there was no trust there. That I felt like she wasn't willing to really even kind of look at me or listen when we were talking. And I kind of held steady, and I kept waiting for the moment. I kept waiting for the moment, and the moment wouldn't come, and it was so painful. And then recently, we had a phone conversation, and it was still kind of like that. It went on for 45 minutes, an hour, kind of surface level. And it still felt like that barrier was there. And then all of a sudden, years later, this is several years later, it was like a little window opened up in the wall. And we were able to have a real conversation about what really happened, which had to do with actually a miscommunication between us, misunderstanding. And we were able to get down into the details of that and unpack it and untangle it and untie the knot. And it was a spectacular conversation. And I felt all the warmth come flooding back from her and in myself. And we ended up talking for another hour and a half because it was such a powerful conversation. Even though it was late at night, we were both tired. We just kept talking and talking because it was so nice. That's how this works. This system is real. Knowing when to go forward after waiting and waiting and waiting, knowing when to go forward, and don't waste that opportunity. Really powerful. So I want to say there's two ways to learn about this. One is, again, buy the book. The book is excellent. You can look on YouTube. You can, talk to other people about how communication works. For me, this is actually, it would be great, but it's also very difficult. It's so much easier to enter a course where people have thought this through and they're presenting the material in a systematic way and asking me to do this and try that, and it just gets into you more easily. This is a powerful methodology, and I think of somebody who came to one of our courses a few years ago, happened to be a live course, and when we were going around at the end saying, what was your experience, she said, I feel like a curse has been lifted from my life. And that really touched me, really struck me. But I understand it because I feel the same way. In my conversation with Sarah, it was like that. I could have really, you know, done the wrong thing in that situation. I really could have, and disrupted that for years more. But instead, we have reconnected, and there's that warmth again. It's so precious. Um, so I want to say that if you, I'm gonna paste the link if you want to sign up for one of our courses. You're welcome to go to our website. There's other courses as well, but I'm going to recommend this particular one today where you actually get to hear Susan Chapman teaching the core material. This is from a course we did a number of years ago in 2014, and it was kind of old-fashioned video and audio, and we just upgraded it recently using some of this new software that's available. And we would love to have you in there. We would love to get your feedback. And part of what I'm going to give you today is that if you sign up, you actually get a bonus pack of videos. And there's videos we did last year about COVID and lockdowns. And we did videos about, racial justice with some of the Black Lives Matter things that were going on in the United States, gender fluidity. There's all sorts of topics that we take on in a different way, not just the usual way. And also guided meditations. There's a class from one of our teachers in Holland, Esther Hasselman, about the 4 seasons of relationship, which is really some beautiful material about how relationships cycle in a natural way, closer and further and closer and further. And then also, if you sign up for the class, we'll give you, at the completion of the class, you get 2 free months in our online community. And that's where you can come to live events like this with others and dialogue with people. So I think that's it for today. I don't know if there's any questions. You're welcome to ask questions in the chat box. If you have any questions. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just say, some people ask me, if I'm having a relationship with somebody, do they have to know this material too for it to work? And the answer is no, absolutely not. I mean, if they do know it, it can be helpful, but they don't have to know what you're doing. You navigating your lights is a personal experience, and it's helpful in any situation. It's a bit like exercise in that way. Somebody says, does it, well, does everybody have to be strong? It's like, well, no, if one person is strong, then carrying the couch up the stairs it's helps by that one person's strength. If you're dealing with your kids and only you know it and they don't, that's fine. Your strength will actually help in that situation to navigate those connections and again allow people to come back together at least a little bit. Again, it's not a magic wand. There are people who don't want to connect with us. They have that red light. They have the no trespassing sign up. That's their right. That's their pattern. But we can look for opportunities when to move in. Um, I think that's it for today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for staying. If you have any further questions, let us know. And yeah, you're very welcome, Meyer. Oh, that's great. You're reading the book. That's fantastic. Yeah, and you're welcome anytime. So whenever the timing is right. Thanks again for coming. We'll hopefully we'll see you soon. Take care.